Hello mathematicians, in this video we're going to learn how to convert a fraction to a decimal and percent, a decimal into a percent and fraction, and a percent into a decimal and fraction. Let's begin. Our first two problems are going to convert fractions first into a decimal and then to a percent. So 7/8 as a decimal. If we want to convert this into a decimal, we basically do division. So 7 divided by 8, 7 divided by 8. We can use the old-fashioned method and do it by hand, or we can use a calculator and find that 7 divided by 8 equals 0.875 or 0.875. And that's pretty much it. You've turned 7/8 into a decimal by using division. Next, we are going to convert this fraction into a percent. Now, to do so, you need to start off with the same step. Turn it into a decimal first. So divide 3/5, 3 divided by 5, and you're going to end up with 0.6 or 0.6. Now from here, you can turn it into a percent. And to do that, I've got this cool little trick. It's called DIP, which stands for decimals into percents. And whether you want to turn a decimal into a percent or a percent into a decimal, there's like this arrow on the bottom. Unfortunately, it's being kind of covered over there. But if you want to go decimal to percent, you're going to move your decimals to the right. If you want your percent to turn into a decimal, you move your decimal to the left. So percents into decimals, move left. Decimals into percents, move right. So we want to turn this decimal into a percent. So we dip to the right. So we move the decimal place 2 times. That's moves 2 spaces, and it leaves us with a blank space right here, which we need to fill with something. So we put a 0 there, a 0 placeholder, and now it is a percent. So our percent is 60%. We've converted our fraction into a percent. Let's look at the next page, where we turn decimals into a percent and decimals into a fraction. So write 0.32 into a percent. Whoa, we can use dip here because we are turning a percent into a decimal into a percent. So a decimal into a percent. So we're going to dip to the right. So it starts here. We're going to move right 2 spaces, dip to the right, which means 0.32 now turns into just plain 32 and add a percent sign, so 32%. Next, we are turning 0.36 into a fraction. Our dip won't help us here, but it's okay. 0.36 is also known as 36 hundredths, or you would know that it's 2 decimal spaces. The first is a tenths, the next space is a hundredth space, or hundredth place. So we would write 36 over 100. Now we're almost done, but we still need to reduce. So we can divide both of them by 2 because they're both even. But if you are really good with your divisibility rules, you would know that you can also divide both of them by 4. That's the fastest way to reduce it so that you don't have to do it a bunch of times. So 36 divided by 4 is going to be 9. 100 by 4 divided by 4 is going to be 25. And you can't divide it any further. So 9 over 25 is going to be our answer. That's how you turn 0.36 into a fraction. Finally, our percents into a decimal and a percent into a fraction. Percent into decimal, that's where we can use dip. So remember, now because we're going percent into decimal, we're reading it backwards, we're going left. Our decimal point would normally start here, and it's going to move left 2 spaces. So 1, 2, so we should have a decimal point here. So you should end up with 0.78 as your decimal. So that's how you write 78% as a decimal. You dip to the left. Now we're going to write our percent into a fraction. So what we need to do first is we do need to dip to the left. So turn it into a decimal first. So we have our 65. We're going to dip to the left. So a decimal would ordinarily be here. It's going to move 2 spaces over here, and we end up with 0.65. Now from here, to turn it into a fraction, remember 0.65 is just 65 hundredths. So you would write 65 over 100, and you reduce if you can. 5 goes into both of them, and so if you divide both by 5, you should get 13 over 20. So now you know how to do conversions between fractions, decimals, and percents.